you're getting some good bounces, right? Unlike your Oilers, who are the
bounces.
Good bounces. What do you make of it? What's coming and what good news?
Well, no, we've got, yes, the Minister of Finance obviously will be giving the economic update, focusing on delivering a strong Canada for all Canadians. And I'll leave it to the Minister to, some of you will be spending 5 hours in a lockup, so I don't want to front run that, and make sure that you have a chance to go through all the numbers, all the details, and we look forward to his speeches.
The deficit is lower. Is that because
budget? How will this be different from your predecessor's budgets?
What do you think of Shell's takeover of Hajdu?
It's a vote of confidence in Canada.
Weekly workout. See you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question?
What do you want to see in the economic statement today? What do you think the message it'll give to Canadians?
Well, look, I think we have to demonstrate that, notwithstanding that there are real challenges on the horizon for the Canadian economy, that there's a plan in place to help ensure that we grow the Canadian economy in a way that works for everybody. That means making sure that the economy grows, but households have the means to get by. So, big day. Looking forward to seeing the details.
One more thing. Canada is proposing this ban on AI and chatbots for children. Is that something your federal government's considering?
Look, I've had in-depth discussions with some of my colleagues. Obviously, Ministers Miller and Solomon and Anna Sangri, to some degree, will all have say in the final decision that we'll take as a government on how to move forward. But this is something not only as a minister, but as a parent of young kids, I care deeply about. And if we have the opportunity to better protect kids in Canada, I think it's incumbent on all parliamentarians, regardless of partisan affiliation, to do what they can.
Will we see something before the...
Minister, are you thinking that Canada's new wealth fund will actually help pay for the pipelines that Albertans want?
Well, actually today I'm really focused on the spring economic statement, and I'm really excited. This is a serious government, and we're working really hard for all Canadians, and so I'm really excited to see, I'm sure the new measures we're implementing will do exactly that.
Can you do bigger things now that you have a majority? Hajdu, I know how important training in the building trades is to you. The Prime Minister yesterday told CBC News that there's going to be a big move on that in today's economic statement. Can you describe exactly the scope of the ambition in terms of helping young people get into this?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I don't know yet what's in the spring economic statement, but I can tell you that we've been really focused on the question of how we not only attract people to the trades, but I think importantly, as union trainers and colleges have indicated, how we get people through the training. My own son is a Red Seal crane operator, as I've said before, and just watching his journey through the process of acquiring that Red Seal really highlighted, I think, what unions have been saying, which is that the first and second year of an apprenticeship is really a vulnerable time for people in their training. It's often stop and start employment. There's often blocks of time where people are in training. Income is really kind of up and down for people. It's often not really young people either. It's people in their sort of early 20s, mid 20s, so people are established with homes in some cases or truck payments in other cases. And so we've been really questioning how we can support the ambition of building big. All across the country, you'll hear this from construction workers, from project managers, that the skilled trades is a real area of shortage. And the last thing I'll just say about this is that this is really critical to do quickly, because in fact what we're seeing is on the older end of tradespeople, people retiring out of the skilled trades. And what many people don't realize is you need those skilled Red Seal workers to train the new generation.
Do you give the money to the colleges in the form of federal funding for colleges, or do you give the money to the individual?
What I would say is that, look, this is about ensuring that there, across the spectrum, there's supports for people to get into the trades, stay in their training, and ultimately help employers find that talent.
Unemployment.
Playground and podium thing that the Prime Minister shared with Adrian Arsenault yesterday. Can you tell us anything about what that involves? Is this about medals, or is this about infrastructure? What was it?
Well, the pathway from a playground to a podium is a long one that can take decades. And we want to support physical activity rates, participation, we want to support athletes, but we just recognize the positive impact that has on our country. And it's ironic that just 2 sets of stairs it's got me completely out of breath, but the Prime Minister appreciates how sport, physical activity, and recreation brings us together, and I'll have to look up the interview with Adrian because I didn't see it.
It takes resources, though, right? So in the context of an economic update, is there a big new spend?
It requires infrastructure, it requires structural investments, it requires capacity, and it requires, in some cases, subsidy for sports for people who just simply can't afford it. So today's a great day for Canadian sport, and I couldn't be more honored to be in this role today.
Okay,
Thanks.
looking forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Why is the F-35 contract still under review? Like, it's been under review for months. What's the holdup on this?
It's a really important analysis that we're conducting. It's one of the largest procurements in Canadian history. Obviously, it speaks to industrial benefits. It speaks to Buy Canadian provisions. It speaks to jobs. It speaks to investment. It speaks to subcontracting. It speaks to all kinds of issues that are important for us.
But it's been a year. What are the sticking points here? Like, what questions have you not answered yourselves yet?
All of the above.
But what have you been
Would there
doing
be
for the
money for
past
this
year?
What are the considerations into a joint fighter jet deal with Japan, Italy, and the UK? What's on your mind in that?
No, the question there is a number of like-minded states have come together to pursue more advanced research, or consider pursuing more advanced research for a new fighter jet, a new generation of fighter jet. It's something that we're examining.
Do you expect money in this spring economic update for submarines, like to move forward with it?
Well, look, the submarine procurement is well underway. It's being headed up by the Defense and the DIA, the agency. My colleague, Secretary of State Fuhr, and the CEO of the agency are now in the second wave of consultations and negotiations with both of the bidders.
They wanted to the government wanted the two companies to sweeten the deal. Do you expect more economic benefits in a revised RFP?
Look, I used to negotiate for a living, but I know about negotiations. You don't comment on negotiations you're not a part of. So look, it's well underway, and I'm hopeful. Thank you, folks.
Can I ask you about forced labor?
Sure.
The hearings underway in Washington on various countries' forced labor practices and whether they're doing enough. I didn't see Canada on the witness list to say anything about that, but we could be hit by tariffs. What are we doing to persuade the Americans we're...
Well, if you look at our provisions around forced labor, it's on our Supply Chains Act, it's in our Customs Act. We're putting more resources behind CBSA to make sure that we're able to track down and detain shipments. And so we are there. We're going to continue investing and making sure that our supply chains eradicate forced labor.
Minister Sidhu, UAE has pulled out of OPEC. There are reports from Reuters. What do you make of that, and what will it do in terms of the impact on Canada?
Well, from what I'm hearing from Canadians, of course, on fuel prices, I've got a large trucking community in Brampton East, so we're stepping up with the suspending the fuel excise tax. A year ago from today, we cut the carbon tax, so that's 28 cents of savings, and we need to continue working with partners around the world, including the UAE. Thank you.
Any comments on forced labor and vehicles from Alabama?
Look, on this integrity of our supply chains, we'll continue having those conversations, and as I said, we're going to continue putting resources behind CBSA, making sure that our Customs Act, Supply Chains Act have, provisions for forced labor to eradicate them from our supply chains. This is what we expect from Canadian businesses, and we'll continue pushing.
Regardless of country of origin.
Islands, please. The Globe Mail has a story that says Mr. Ford's government has a piece of legislation on the books that will basically take over half of Little Norway Park and most of the Toronto Islands. What do you think?
I have no knowledge of that, so it's impossible for me to comment. It's hard enough for me to comment on what's going on in the House of Commons. Adding Queen's Park is a tall order.
When do you expect the committee changes to actually happen this week?
Immediately.
It's an online safety bill on your agenda to be introduced this spring. I know it's in development, but is it one that
I'll defer to the minister on that.
But is it one that you anticipate could be introduced this spring?
I'll defer to the minister on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
UAE leaving OPEC, your thoughts?
I'm going to begin with a clarification comment. There has been some discussion about Canada's position at the United Nations, and I want to be absolutely clear that there was no vote taken on the matter, and in particular my officials who spoke 2 times yesterday on the issue of Iran were completely clear that there is absolutely no support from the Canadian government for the Iranian regime and any leadership positions it holds. Once again, there was no vote taken. Canada expressed its strong disagreement with Iranian leadership twice yesterday at the United Nations. I have since phoned my officials in New York to ensure that they are absolutely clear on this matter, as they were in their remarks. And finally, I want to say that Canada does not stand in any way in favor of the Iranian regime, and we are utilizing our position at the United Nations to express our solidarity with Gulf countries in the region during this very difficult time in which they are facing retaliatory attacks from Iran. In my phone calls with them, I've underlined that position as well. Donc, en français, je voudrais être clair, complètement clair. Il n'y avait pas de vote hier et mes officiaux étaient là et ils ont souligné l'inacceptabilité de le gouvernement iranien et aussi ils ont été là pour souligner notre solidarité avec les pays du Golfe. Donc, ce sont des messages clairs. Nous ne sommes pas été là pour appuyer le gouvernement iranien, pas du tout. Nous avons livré les remarques contre le gouvernement iranien et nous étions là pour les pays du Golfe.
Have you talked with your U.S. counterparts about Canada's position on Iran?
I'm in touch with Secretary Rubio through, most recently, our G7 meeting in Paris. Our teams are consistently in touch, and we have discussed, for example, the Strait of Hormuz and how we can work together to ensure that freedom of navigation is a reality, support for the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea as well, and that is a point of work that we're continuing on. I will say that I also met with Ambassador Hoekstra recently to underline Canada's position in the Middle East and the Gulf region as well. We have more work to do, but that is the work of diplomacy right now. In addition to the United States, I've spoken several times with my Gulf partners. For example, the Foreign Minister of the UAE, the Foreign Minister of Egypt, the Foreign Minister of Pakistan yesterday, the Foreign Minister of Kuwait yesterday. So these are calls that are happening frequently and routinely in order to exemplify and demonstrate Canada's solidarity with Gulf countries who are facing unjustified retaliatory attacks and who are showing great restraint at not responding in kind. This is the work of diplomacy. This is the work that we will continue to do. And in the coming weeks, I will be traveling to the region myself. Thank you very much.
Are you going to Armenia this weekend, Minister? Open to expanding the definition of deepfakes to include nearly nudes in Bill C-16?
Look, I think it would be very helpful if we actually had one of the parliamentary committees, notably the Senate has the opportunity to look at this coming up next, to understand the potential impact that would have. When we were doing the policy work to get this bill ready, we want it to reflect the existing provision that would exist for intimate images that were not created with the use of AI, to the extent that there are new harms that we can address that the committee deems relevant or directs our attention to. I'd want to consider them in good faith. But I do think the process of being able to entertain advice from expert witnesses will strengthen our analysis on that issue.
How come, just given everything we heard from Grok, and I'm not even talking about the online harms part of it, how come nearly nudes were not in this bill in the first place? Or why didn't it target things like the creation of these sexualized deepfakes versus the distribution? So two separate but related issues. So one on the scope of the specific images that are scoped in.
We want it to mirror the language that exists for existing criminal provisions when it comes to intimate images as they exist. As you can imagine, there is significant jurisprudence on this issue, drawing precisely where the line may exist as to what ought to be criminal and what ought not to be criminal can be a challenging exercise when you're dealing with images that may mean different things to different people. And you want to make sure, particularly when you're dealing with criminal behavior that's morally culpable enough that we would sentence someone potentially to be incarcerated, that we are in fact capturing the kind of behavior that we wish to capture. The second issue that you mentioned on the creation, again, want it to mirror the offences that exist outside of the context of AI deepfakes. And this is one that I would like to see the advice that will come back from the Senate committee on in particular. Obviously, when you're dealing with an intimate images that don't exist through the creation of AI, the creation of such an image isn't necessarily possible of an actual person when it's been created based on something that exists in reality, but through the use of a system that does it synthetically. So this is really a change in technology demonstrating that the existing provision that applied to real images may not be able to be simply copied and pasted. So I'll look forward to seeing what the deliberations of the Senate committee result in, including on that specific issue.
But are you open in the meantime, because the committee is going to begin its clause by clause, I think, Wednesday, are you open to the government accepting some opposition amendments to expand the definition of deepfakes as is in the bill now?
So I'm open to it. I would like to make sure that those proposed amendments or revisions are based on the testimony that came before the committee to ensure that it's informed by expert testimony. There are people who've dedicated their careers to understanding these issues, many of whom have asked to or been invited to testify before one house or the other. And to the extent that those amendments reflect the expert testimony to help prevent harm, we would be open to them. That's not a conclusive statement. I want to see what the Senate actually does when it comes to clause by clause first. But certainly, as I said during my Senate presentation at the beginning of their study, we are open to amendments, but I don't want to compromise on the timeline to the point where we're now kicking this bill into the fall. There is still time to have the 3 justice bills, in my view, adopted before summer. And if we can entertain reasonable amendments that come through the Senate without compromising on those timelines, we would consider each of them.
Experts who testify before the Justice Committee have said the government's definition of deepfakes was too narrow. Do you accept that criticism?
Well, I'd like to see specifically how other parliamentarians would like to expand it. If they end up considering the feedback from experts and say the original draft was the right path forward, I would accept that feedback. However, if they say you do need to expand it, and here's why, here's the testimony we can draw our recommendations back to, we would certainly be open to those amendments. So I'm not going to suggest that every provision is exactly perfect from the first draft, but to the extent that there are reasonable amendments that seek to add protections for people who are vulnerable, we would be more than open to them.
But you are open to expanding the definition as is written now?
Yeah, we are open to it, again, subject to ensuring proposed amendments reflect the testimony that has actually been provided, and that we understand that the analysis comes based upon deep expertise, and not to suggest this is the case, but not a series of amendments that someone may have heard of but can't back up with expert testimony. So if we can identify where there is a proposed amendment, the basis upon which that amendment was made from a source that we believe is expert, of course, we're open to expanding the definition, but I do want to not cloud the Senate's analysis. They deserve the ability to make their proposed amendments in isolation of my own perspective.
Are you concerned about whether companies will even listen to Canadian laws once this passes in some form?
Well, so I think there's different issues. I think obviously we all have an interest in everyone in Canada, including corporate actors, abiding by the law. The extent to which we can enforce the law obviously depends to some degree on where in fact a criminal infraction is committed. When you're dealing with the extraterritorial application of Canada's laws to foreign players, which in the digital space is a new challenge, enforcement can be very challenging. When we're dealing with corporate players who exist within Canada providing service to Canadians on servers within Canada, absolutely we don't just expect that people will follow the law, we would intend to enforce it to the full extent of Canada's ability.
to partners in the Conservatives bloc or even NDP about some of the amendments they might bring forward when it comes to deepfakes?
So I have had conversations with members of different parties. They have not necessarily been with the degree of specificity that you and I have just been discussing right now. I took a strong sense of comfort from my last conversation with my Conservative colleague, who explained in particular on Bill C-14 and C-16 that though they may have some amendments come forward, they don't expect any partisan games. They want to see both bills adopted into law, and I undertook to consider the amendments that would be forthcoming in good faith in hopes that we can move forward and have these bills both become law as quickly as possible.
Your colleague, Minister Michelle, just talked to us about having conversations about sort of a ban on tobacco for young people, like what they did in the UK. Are you part of those conversations?
So I've not discussed that explicitly with Minister Michelle. I think obviously doing whatever we can to reduce the consumption of tobacco products amongst young people is extremely important. When you look at the long-term harm that we know tobacco products can cause, preventing people from starting to use it early in life is a key strategy if you want to have the predictive value of the policies you're going to put in place to prevent people from smoking in the first place, is going to reduce the social harm across Canada from tobacco more broadly. So I now have an excuse. She's my seatmate in the House. I expect we're going to have a chat today, but I've got a personal opinion on it, but have not been engaged formally in the policy development process.
New Zealand had to overturn their tobacco ban. Do you foresee any sort of legal difficulties in enforcing a ban like that?
Well, let me figure out exactly where we might land on some of these things before I start worrying about difficulties enforcing. I think, again, fodder for my conversation on the margins of question period today.
There's a committee studying the medical assistance in dying expansion that's set to take effect in March of next year. And there's been criticism from some of the experts and some of the committee members that they've called nearly twice as many witnesses who are opposed to this expansion as those who are for it. They haven't heard from anyone with lived experience, and that ultimately they're worried the committee's work is biased. Are you concerned about this? Are you paying attention to this?
I am paying attention to the study. I don't view it to be my role to police the ability of committee members to invite the witnesses that they believe are most appropriate to hear from when they're undertaking a study on something so important and so current within Canada's legal framework. So from my perspective, the Committee of Parliamentarians was struck so they could take a broad base of feedback to the extent they are hearing from people with a particular it sounds like from your question they're hearing from people who have a range of different perspectives, but to the extent that the committee has chosen to hear from those who have a particular lens to their expertise, I think that's a decision that the committee can and should be empowered to make.
Does it concern you that the government is not stepping in here in a way that, like, if this committee produces yet another report that says we're not ready because it's heard from mostly people who are opposed to the expansion, does that concern you that you're not getting all of the information you could be getting?
So I would take issue with the characterization just mildly, because it's not for the government to dictate to the committee who they ought to hear from. To the extent the committee hears from a range of different voices, I trust my colleagues both in the House and in the Senate across parties to wade through different perspectives. And even though they may not be perfectly weighted to from one perspective to another, that would be an exception in my experience in Parliament. Typically speaking, at the end of a study, you do hear from a preponderance of voices that tend to lean one way or the other, and sometimes the outcome is reflected on the perspectives of different parties represented on that committee. I don't want to interfere with the ability of the committee to do its work. I look forward sincerely to hearing from the committee in terms of the actual position that they're going to take on some of the issues that they're studying, but I don't necessarily have a problem with the witness list, and if I did, frankly, it wouldn't be my problem to have. That's a problem very deliberately that we've left for the committee to sort out.
Is the government open to legislating an indefinite delay on the expansion into MAID as the sole underlying cause for mental illness as the sole underlying cause of MAID?
Look, I'm going to wait and figure out what the committee actually recommends coming from this before I project a potential government position under the debate. I think it's essential that the committee is actually given space to do their work, and I'll look forward to seeing which recommendation. Sorry, I'm going to have to run. I'm sorry to run on.
This advocating for the end of the gun buyback program. Do you have any response? I know there's been several gun.
I've read the answer of Police Se Souvient, and on that file, I totally approve their vision.
And for young Canadians, like in the UK?
Yeah.
Why not?
No, I'm looking into it right now. We saw what UK did, but I'm looking into it. with all partners for now.
Are you open to Canadian governments considering?
Just talking about redoing 21st Sussex in his interview with Adrian Arsenault yesterday.
Yes.
Could you share some more light on what that would look like, when the timelines would be?
I think that the Prime Minister is absolutely right when he says it's a national embarrassment what's happened to 24 Sussex, and we're on it. I have nothing more to say at this point.
Will this government
Thank
deal
you very
with
much.
it?
Yes, we will.
When?
Thank you.
5 years, 7 years, Minister?
You've seen the pace of this government. It's not going to take that long. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. What do you make, sir, about the Globe and Mail story about splitting the submarine contract, that the Koreans would get the Pacific side and the... any thoughts?
There's been no change.
No
from
change?
what I've been told, so we're going with one vendor.
Okay, thank you. The Prime Minister in Norway talked about changing the funding of elite athletes. Where are we at with that? Is that progressing?
Well, exactly what the Prime Minister said is that we need to revamp the Canadian sports system from playground to podium. That is a required investment for our ecosystem, from little kids that want to take swimming lessons and their parents want to see them physically active, to our top athletes. And we've got to invest in that ecosystem if we want to see it healthy and vibrant. And we're going to learn more about that ambition today.
Oh, okay. So elite athlete funding is possible today.
We're going to find more about that today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
See you too.